everybody.
Oh.
Yeah, Ralph with that. Making his weekly appearance.
I want
All right, it
you
is
to know
7
I just
o'clock.
got in.
Are we using it?
Everybody good? I'm going to get started. Okay. Okay, this is Beth Cassavant. This is the April 13th, 2021 meeting of the Board of Selectmen. As a preliminary matter, please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. John LeBeau.
Present.
John Samia.
Present.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Kevin Mizikar.
Present.
Valerie Clemmy.
Present.
This open meeting of the Board of Selectmen is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Board of Selectmen is convening by Google Meet as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please be sure to press *6 to mute your device. The meeting will feature public comment. Please wait until I open the item for public comment and press 6 to unmute your device. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. So that brings us to the first item on the agenda, which is to approve the bills, payrolls, and warrants.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Mr. LeBeau,
Aye.
Mr. Samia,
Aye.
myself, aye. Item number 2 is to approve the minutes of March 30th, 2021.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, Mr. LeBeau,
Aye.
Mr. Samia,
Aye.
and myself, aye. Item number 3 is announcements and reports. I have a couple of announcements. Just like to let everyone know that Shrewsbury's 2021 Springtown Cleanup Day is scheduled for Saturday, April 24th. Gather your group, club, neighbors, or family and help spruce up and beautify the town. You'll pick a location from our sign-up link and then collect trash and debris and place it in designated town cleanup bags. DPW staff will collect the trash after noon at the predetermined location. Each group should send one person to pick up supplies at Shrewsbury Town Hall, 100 Maple Avenue from 8 to 9:30 a.m. on Saturday. Please wear a mask when picking up supplies. People should work in groups of 12 or less, and work gloves will be provided while supplies last. There is a sign-up link that can be found on the town website, or you can email parkrec@shrewsburyma.gov to get some more information or to sign up. I'd also like to announce that there is a pilot program taking place called the VIA WRTA. This was an item of correspondence at our last meeting. It's a grant that provides on-demand microservice in Westboro and expand it into Shrewsbury. So it's a ride service. So for just $2 a ride, people can use an app with their smartphone, or there is a phone number to call, and it will connect you to other modes of transportation offered by the WRTA, such as buses or trains, or you could just use it to get to your destination within the boundaries of Shrewsbury and Westboro. So I do want to thank and recognize State Representative Hannah Kane for her advocacy on this initiative and getting it expanded into Shrewsbury. And there's plenty of information about this program on the town website and all of our social media outlets. I did notice that your first 10 rides are free until May 23rd. So hopefully something that people will be able to take advantage of in the community. Are there any other announcements or reports this evening? Okay, very good. Then we are going to move on to item number 4, which is the town manager's report. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Mizikar.
Good evening, board members. I have a couple items that I'd like to go through this evening with you. And I'm also joined this evening by Public Buildings Division Manager Keith Baldinger he will review some activity that's going to take place at the Patton School. First and foremost, I'm very pleased to announce to the board that the town has had its AAA bond rating affirmed. We sought another bond rating through Standard & Poor's Global Rating Services for the refunding of the Sherwood bonds, which were originally issued in 2011. That refunding paperwork will access the market coming up later this week, and everything will be ready for your next meeting. We are, based upon market conditions and that AAA rating, projecting a savings of $1,700,000 over the final 10 years of this term, which would be a 14% savings over that time. And I'm estimating that it will reduce the average single-family tax bill by $13 next year. So we're very happy with that approach that we're taking to continue to manage what we can to keep things off the tax rate. I'm also excited that the National League of Cities is holding a detailed seminar on the American Rescue Plan next Wednesday. Myself, Alex Martinez, and Kristen Lass from the office will be attending to begin our planning work and understand how better we'll be able to use that stimulus funding. A couple more items. Board members, we've been notified that there is a new logistics facility being developed off of Pine Hill Drive in the town of Boylston. This is adjacent to the FedEx building that was constructed 3 or 4 years ago. And this proposed distribution warehouse will be a bay building with approximately 400,000 square feet of gross building area. It'll be have mainly warehouse, but also some office space within it. A traffic analysis has been conducted, and the future tenant, who hasn't been named, is projecting that 70% of the traffic, at least 70% of the traffic, will move south down 140 and get onto 290, or vice versa, come from 290 up 140 just to this facility. So this is fully within the town of Boylston. We have very limited opportunity to comment, but I will be reaching out to the town administrator to share our continued desire to work with the town of Boylston and keep traffic out of the Shrewsbury town center. And then finally, before I turn it over to Mr. Baldinger for a couple comments on his work at the Patton School, I did want to announce that tomorrow the Shrewsbury Police Department will be launching a new way to communicate with the citizens of Shrewsbury. We'll be utilizing a new app called See It, Say It, Send It. And through that platform, you'll be able to both send and receive timely information with the Shrewsbury Police Department. As everyone knows, we're constantly trying to improve the way not only the police department, but every department communicates with residents. And using the See It, Say It, Send It app will help to ensure effective lines of communication remain open through the police department. So with that, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I will turn it over to Mr. Baldinger for an overview of the work that's going to be done at Patton next week.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Mr. Baldinger.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm here tonight because a few weeks ago I was walking Patton School and noticed we had some issues with a few of our trees. So I thought it was important to have the property, the rest of the trees on the property assessed. And we work with a consultant from Davie Resource Group to do that type of work for us. They do a lot of work for the Parks Division too, and the Highway Department actually. They've been through Dean Park and Foundation Fields and a few other locations. But so the consultant walked the site. She assessed 36 trees on the property. And as most of you know, the front of Patton School has quite a few of them. And I actually was a little surprised at the amount of issues that we have there. We have directives to do some major pruning and work on about 14 of those 36 trees, and 9 of them need to be removed because they're a safety hazard, or a few of them are just dead. But if the main ones in front of the building, where students and staff and residents use that area often, there's some unsafe issues there. And the reason I put this report together was it's going to make a significant change to the property. when we start removing those trees. 6 of the trees are right in front of the school, and 4 of them are between 24 and 31-inch diameter trees, so they're quite large Norway maples. So I thought it was important that we let people know, let the residents know what we're doing there, because they will see a significant change in the property after next week. And again, this is all about safety and safety of our students and residents, because we don't really like to cut trees down, because they are beautiful and they do a lot for the environment. So removing them is usually only because they're in very poor health or unsafe. So this work should be completed next week during April vacation. Probably a couple of days work for our tree contractor. Any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Sure. And thank you for the report. Are there questions from the board?
Madam Chair,
Mr. LeBeau?
good evening and thank you. I saw in one of the documents that was floating around about this, that this fall there's going to be some consultation about possible future plantings. Is that correct?
Yes, so we are planning to replant them in the fall, and we want to bring the Patton school community into that also. Davie Resource Group is going to work with us to offer some educational time to the students. And so we plan to do that mid-September. And I've already spoken to the principal about that too. So.
If I could, I'd like to have some participation in the decision-making on what's going to get planted there.
Sure, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Keith, I know it's in the information that was sent to the board, but just for the public, I'm not sure if you mentioned that this isn't related to the Asian longhorn beetle, correct?
That's correct. There was no signs of any ALB damage on any of those trees. And quite a few of them are maples, so we're fortunate of that.
Do we regularly just inspect trees on town property?
In the past 2 years, Kevin and Esposito and myself have started doing that more on our properties that we manage. Dean Park, just about every tree has been assessed there. I think so. We have a tree keeper software that's Davie Resource Group has, and we have a licensed agreement with that. We use it every year. I think there's about 1,100 trees in that throughout town that we've assessed to make sure that. And what that does is helps us track issues and brings, helps us with a maintenance plan to stay on top of trees, because trees are based on risk. So as they grow, they might go from low risk to moderate risk. So we try to make sure that we keep them safe.
Any other questions? It is truly unfortunate that those trees need to be removed, and so many of them. But I have noticed when I drive by the Patton School, especially now that all of the elementary students are back in the classroom, that they are standing outside to have snack under those trees, it looks like, pretty much every day. And we certainly don't want to run into a situation where someone's safety is at risk. And so I do appreciate the time that you've taken to put this report together, and also that there's going to be involvement of the Patton community and of Selectman LeBeau in choosing the new trees that will serve the next generations of Patton students and Shrewsbury residents. It's unfortunate, but I'm glad that there's a plan for it moving forward and a plan to plant more trees. All right,
Madam Chair, one other item.
Go ahead, Mr. LeBeau.
I just want to mention that Norway maple, with which Mr. Baldinger related as either all or most of the trees, is a tree that's considered an invasive species. So they're big mature trees, but they are now known very strongly not considered to be a desirable tree anymore. So I'm sure we can find some better substitutes.
And I think you mentioned that this work will be taking place over the April vacation, which begins next week, correct?
Yep, that's correct. So not only are they removing those 9 trees, they're doing some pruning and some priority pruning on the rest of the trees in the front of the property. Anything that was called out in our recent assessment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's nothing further and no other questions on the town manager's report, we can move on to item number 5, which is the coronavirus update from the town manager.
So a couple updates for the board. Since your last meeting, we have been notified of an additional 105 positive cases within the town of Shrewsbury. Unfortunately, we continue to remain in the yellow state level designation. I'm seeing a slight upward tick in our cases there with 18.3 daily incidents per 100,000 and a percent positivity. That is the total number of positives that come out of all the tests over the previous 2-week period of 2.34%. We do continue to provide updates to the community on a daily basis every weekday and for weekends on Monday. Fortunate to report that there's been no increase in total reported deaths, so we remain at 66 COVID indicated deaths. We do remain closed to the public. We are hoping to wait till we get to green, but we continue to have hope with the further rollout of the vaccine later this month. And we're beginning to plan some specific opening dates for the town hall, the senior center, and the library. We plan to begin offering appointments at the town hall the week of May 3rd. Of course, the week prior to that, the building will be open for early voting for the annual town election, which is scheduled for May 4th. The senior center plans to begin to conduct limited outdoor activities on May 10th. In the library, we'll be resuming additional activities within the building, including limited time restricted browsing later in the month of April. So we remain positive that as the vaccine rolls out further, that we'll continue to see a decline in cases and we'll be safe to reopen those buildings as we move into the month of May. Updating the board on the vaccine report for all town residents. We know that at least 1 dose had been administered to over 15,000 residents, which is an increase of 4,000 since your last meeting. And 2 doses are fully vaccinated, depending on the manufacturer, is nearly 8,500 residents, which is up over 25% since your last meeting. So we continue to see good progress there. We continue to be in the 50 plus with 1 medical conditions, and certain additional workers came on the eligibility list on April 5th. And on April 19th, just a little over 1 week from today, the general public ages 16 years of age and older will be able to register themselves for vaccination. I would like to just take the opportunity to identify and you know, if residents are seeking ways to get access to the vaccine, there's plenty of either individual websites of providers like major pharmacies, retailers like Walmart, several hospitals. There's also several very functional tools. One, for instance, that's very effective on social media platform Twitter called Vaccine Time, that is a internet bot that constantly scans the web in Massachusetts for available appointments. It's a very effective tool, and a lot of appointments are made available throughout the course of each and every day. So I highly encourage residents to get familiar with that and be prepared to schedule their appointment. Of course, you can still sign up at the state through the website for registration at one of their mass vaccination sites and receive a text message once an appointment's available for you. Taking a look at the bigger picture of positive data over the course of the past now nearly 13 months, We've seen 2,857 cases. April of 2021 looks like, at least at this point, it will exceed April of 2020, which isn't good. We certainly have seen our fair share of cases since November. Our trend analysis over the last 7 days is greater than the 14-day trend analysis, but those out segments are more favorable over the long term, so we hope to continue to see a decline in cases. Our chart of tracking total cases over time continues to remain the same. We certainly have plateaued and are still seeing anywhere in the upper single digits to the lower teens on a daily basis. So the virus is still present within the community. We ask people to continue their diligence and vigilance in following public safety protocols and public health protocols. And our age chart, interestingly, is starting to see a decline in the total number of cases on a percentage basis in those upper age brackets, those who've been eligible for the vaccine the longest, which is really good news. So great caution to those who haven't got their vaccine yet, but remain hopeful that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So that's the end of my report this evening, and have to take any questions if there are any.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Mizikar?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Samia?
just a quick point. It's not really a question and it's evolving, but the town manager, just to the extent as information, if and when it becomes available in light of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that's currently on a temporary pause. I don't know where that's going to go, but they just announced that in the last couple of hours. Just to the extent we get information from the state, we can make that available. I don't know how long the pause will be. It could be a short period of time, but they had some blood clotting issues with a few people. So if and when that evolves, you may have questions in that area. If there's any information we get, assuming it lasts, if we can just share that information.
Yep, and we have provided as much information as we could today as we learned about that.
Okay.
It's my understanding at this point that over 6.5 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has been administered, and there were 6 cases of blood clots. So I applaud the CDC and the FDA for taking that swift action, but that's a very small percentage still. And we'll certainly update if any changes in the status of that vaccine as we're made available through the Mass DPH.
Thank you.
Okay. There are no other questions. We can move on to item number 6 under financial business to review the municipal budget and a recap of the Finance Committee public hearings on April 8th, 2021 and April 10th, 2021.
Madam Chair, as you know, this just becomes a standard standing item on each and every agenda as we move towards town meeting. I do not have any additional updates for the board specifically on the budget itself, but of course, with all of you in attendance at various parts throughout the weekend, last Thursday evening and Saturday, Finance Committee held their public hearing process in their diligence in reviewing each and every individual department request with department heads. They asked several questions and we reviewed budgets, and they'll be reconvening their business for town meeting next April 22nd and potentially the 29th when they hold public hearings on the warrant articles. But no further recommendations or changes on the budget at this time.
I think the 22nd, is that beginning at 6 p.m. instead of the customary 7? So if people want to participate in that public hearing, they should note that it's a 6 o'clock start. All right, then that brings us to item number 7, which is a 7:05 p.m. public hearing with Christopher Mena, town moderator, to consider and possibly act on a quorum level adjustment of town meeting quorum requirements for the 2021 annual town meeting pursuant to section 7 of chapter 92 of the Acts of 2020. So welcome, Mr. Mena. Thank you for joining us this evening. We have in our packets some town meeting attendance data, and then we want to discuss reducing the quorum for the May 22nd annual town meeting. So we are holding that on a Saturday this year, beginning at 8:30 a.m. at the field house at the high school, with all distancing and masking protocols followed. But again, we do recognize that there still may be people that are hesitant to attend a gathering of that size, even with the proper precautions. And so we want to make sure that we adjust the quorum downward so that we can still take care of the business of the town on that Saturday. So I would like to propose a reduction of quorum of 42%, which would bring us to 100 town meeting members present, and just sort of use that as a starting point to get some feedback from you, Mr. Mena, and from the rest of the board.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am fully supportive of the proposal to once again reduce the quorum from 50% plus 1 to the 42% number that you have proposed, for very similar reasons to the discussion that we had last spring and summer in anticipation of the August 8th annual town meeting. So I certainly will defer to the judgment of the selectmen with respect to the actual number of town meeting members that you're proposing constitute a quorum. We did have a very healthy attendance last August annual town meeting. But again, it's better to be cautious and plan for the possibility that attendance will be reduced, and hope that attendance will in fact again be above our regular quorum, which is the tradition certainly in our town. But I think all the COVID protocols are still and should be still in place. So please consider me to have been consulted and to approve of your suggestion as required by the statute.
Thank you. Before I open it up to comments, just for the public, we do have some data here that shows that our last normal, like traditional town meeting of May of 2019, there were 196 town meeting members in attendance. By contrast, at our annual town meeting last August, which was held under the big tent in front of Oak Middle School, we had 154 town meeting members. And at the special town meeting that we held indoors at the field house on September 29th for the police station ballot question, we had 143 town meeting members. So that's just a little background. Are there any other comments from the board? All right. Mr. LeBeau, did you?
Madam
You're trying
Chair.
to unmute there.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought I got a good math education at Shrewsbury High. I don't understand how 100 is 42% of 121.
I will tell you, Mr. Mizikar did the math for me.
Yeah, so it's 42% of the total of the 242. So it's not a reduction
Okay,
of the
so-
quorum to 42%. So instead of being 50 plus 1, it would be 42% of the total membership.
Okay, I'm confused by the language in the draft motion and with the last few words, which is 42% of the normal quorum. So sorry to split hairs, but that's what sent
No,
me down
that's-
the.
No, I think you're correct.
Yeah.
That's an error. Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
So I think the easiest thing to do, if I may suggest, is just to identify the number of 100 will be the quorum for the meeting.
Excellent. Okay, so if there's no further questions or comments, I would take a motion, Mr. LeBeau.
Madam Chair, unscheduled annual town meeting will occur during the state of emergency declared by on March 10th, 2020, and in accordance with Chapter 92 of the Acts of 2020, ensure the mandatory business of the town be completed at the rescheduled meeting, that the board vote to reduce the number of necessary to constitute a quorum at the May 20th annual town meeting to 100 voters.
Second.
Okay. There's no further discussion. Mr. LeBeau?
Aye.
Mr. Samia? Mr. Kane?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay, so that motion passes. Mr. Mena, you indicated that you were good with 100. Just want to make sure that that works for you still.
Yes, it certainly does. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Oh, you know what though? This is supposed to be a public hearing. So I actually need to go back and open it up to make sure that there's no comments or questions from the public. And I see one number that I don't recognize on the line, but I'm not sure if they're here for the hearing. So if you are here to speak on the quorum reduction, if you could unmute by using *6. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure that that person may be here for our next meeting. All right, then I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Mr. LeBeau,
Aye.
Mr. Samia,
Aye.
Mr. Kane,
Aye.
and myself, aye. Okay, so that was in a little bit of reverse order, but I think I checked all the boxes. So thank you, Mr. Mena. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you. Good night.
Good night. All right, that brings us to item number 8, which is a 7:10 p.m. meeting with Adiola Mbadame and Ruth Fibo, co-chairs of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, for an update on the progress of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for being patient. I know that this is a little bit later than the scheduled time, but I do appreciate you being here. And I am looking forward to your report. As some may know, I am the board's representative on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. And after our third meeting, Ruth and Adiola took over as co-chairs, and they have been directing the work of the task force since then. So very much looking forward to your presentation tonight.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Board of Selectmen and others on the call. Thank you for having us in front of you tonight. My name is Ruth Fibo. I'm one of the co-chairs for the Shrewsbury DEI Task Force, and I'm here tonight with my co-chair, Adiola Mbadame. As you know, the town of Shrewsbury put out a call to its residents to form a new DEI task force. A task force was formed, and we had our first meeting on October 19th of 2020. After a few meetings, it became clear that the task force wanted to move forward with, a focus on racial justice and anti-racism, while still looking through the lens of other DEI categories that affect marginalized groups. With this focus in mind, we formed several subcommittees, including an employment subcommittee, a healthcare subcommittee, an education subcommittee, a housing subcommittee, a public safety subcommittee, and a storytelling subcommittee. So I will pause here, and my co-chair Adiola will share with you what the subcommittees have been working on and our future work. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks again for having us. Each subcommittee was charged to identify gaps in their respective topics where racial inequities and other inequalities exist in the town of Shrewsbury. We agreed to start the charge of data collection with finding gaps in different aspects of town branches that lead to racial and other inequities. Each subcommittee was charged with coming up with data to support any problem statements identified. Each subcommittee was required to collect qualitative and quantitative data to support their findings. Data was collected in various ways, including, but not limited to, town meetings, interviewing of town officials and employees, using various reputable direct sources, statistics, and current practices. We voted on a storytelling committee group to further assist with data collection. The group focuses on collecting diversity, equity, and inclusion stories from Shrewsbury residents to attempt to break issues of race or other diversity inequities into life-size pieces by hearing individual stories. Going forward, our next steps are for each subcommittee to continue to interview experts in their respective areas towards further collection of data and work towards recommendations for our final report. And just to note, so far, our task force has communicated with the following officials, but not limited to HR coordinators of the town, which is Christina Anderson, Selco, which is Tracy Schultz, and the Shrewsbury Public Schools HR coordinator, Barb Malone, as well as the fire chief, Chief Jim Bono, and the police chief, Chief Anderson. And I just want to give a big shout out to our task force. They're an incredible, dynamic, and diverse group of Shrewsbury residents. Some have lived here for well over 30 years. Others who are more like me are newer residents, all experts in their various fields from all walks of life. And most of all, they are passionate about this beautiful and beloved town of Shrewsbury, our community, social justice, and togetherness. So thank you very much. And that concludes our presentation. If you guys have any questions for us, we're happy to answer those.
Thank you. We'll pause here to see if there are any questions or comments from the board.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. LeBeau.
Well, thank you. I don't really have any questions. I just want to compliment the task force on the work that it's done. I haven't watched all your meetings. I have watched your meetings. I saw with Mr. Workman, if I got his name right early on, that I thought were very, very impressive. And, you know, when we were trying to conceptualize this, we frequently used phrases like awkward conversations, you know, difficult subjects. And I really want to compliment you because I think you've done exactly that. I've seen some awkward conversations, but all in with people trying to do the right thing. And this is a very difficult time. I fully believe that as a result of this, we're going to get better. We may not get perfect. We'll keep striving to do that. But I do think we're going to improve. I do take note of some of the things in your report relative to regarding diversity, equity, and included perhaps in our personnel bylaw, for instance. And I think these are important recommendations that the various boards and committees are going to need to consider as we move ahead. So I just want to personally, you think about something that's never been done before, at least for us, and how it's going to go. And I think you've done a great job of taking some ideas and some hopes and converting them into a real and valuable process. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Samia.
Thanks for your report. What has been, there are a lot of subcommittees here tackling a lot of different areas. What's been the biggest challenge to date, other than, I assume, everyone trying to be on a Zoom call at the same time? But what are the biggest, say, logistical challenges? Is it data? I mean, I've read through all the reports here. You're, like the employment end in terms of looking at like a hiring pool or looking at applicants and trying to figure that out if we don't have data, or the various subcommittees. What's the biggest challenge so far, particularly as it relates to maybe a problem statement and how to prove it? Because some of these, I think it's hard to prove maybe with data alone. Maybe it's experience with people, but what have been the biggest challenges so far? Because it's a lot of different subject areas, particularly, and it's a limited period of time and it's hard to meet people. So what's been the biggest challenges to date?
So this is Ruth. Sorry, I'm not sure of the format of this, if I could just speak or if I had to wait for Madam Chair.
No, you can go right ahead and speak.
Okay, thank you. So thanks for the question. And thank you, John, for the comment earlier. It is ugly work, right? but everyone in the group, I think, like Adiola mentioned, is very passionate about what we're doing and they feel strongly. So I can't speak for everybody on the task force or for the individual subcommittees. I personally am part of the healthcare subcommittee, so I can speak to maybe some of the challenges that we've encountered. And before I get into that, I'll say that as a bigger task force, I have to say that with as big of a group as we have, it's been pretty great as far as getting the majority, if not all of us, in the same room often, and getting things done on the agenda, and moving things along. So that's been pretty great, actually, and surprising, because with so many people, that can sometimes be tricky, right? Especially remotely. So I can say to the housing subcommittee, some of the challenges we've experienced is our gathering data, or more so up-to-date data. So we find that some of the information that's out there, even from the town, can be 5, 6, 7 years old, depending on what we're looking at, right? So that is sometimes outdated. As many of you probably know, I know when I moved to Shrewsbury 20-something years ago, it was the demographics were a lot more different. So I think some of the challenges we find are finding the right data for the current state. I feel like 2020, is going down in history, and that kind of changed how things are moving forward. So Adiola, I don't know if you can add anything to that.
Yeah, I would agree. Data has been quite the topic when it comes to our subcommittee. One of the things we're trying to tackle right now is, should we or should we not develop a survey for the town? So our meeting yesterday was coming up with a survey. I think Northborough did a general survey at the town level and sent it out to get a general idea of what residents feel, how they feel about DEI issues. Do they feel included in the town? So one of the debates that came up is, A, do we need that kind of survey to prove that DEI issues may or may not exist? And B, who are we going to, when we send these surveys out, what is the feedback? Are we going to get a lot of feedback? Who are we going to hear from? We don't want to, and again, in developing questions, we don't want to send leading questions, right? We don't want to kind of fish for things, but we want to get a general idea, and how best is it to do that. So yeah, it really is a challenge. And logistically with COVID, one of the things someone brought up is, oh, maybe if we do a survey, we can distribute paper copies to the library. So not just electronically, right? But we can get it to different places for access. But places are closed, the town is closed. So where people would normally access in person to collect this information, it makes it hard. So those are definitely, I would say, that is a struggle. That's why we did, though, come up with the storytelling group, because qualitative data is important as well. So hearing stories, hearing from individuals' experiences will definitely can make a difference in the choices that we make with the group going forward, and the recommendations that we'll ultimately make to the board.
Thank you. I look forward to the next report. So thanks for all your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ruth and Adiola, if one of you wouldn't mind just sharing what you see as the greatest success of this task force up until this point.
So I have to say that it's how well we all work together, especially as Adiola mentioned, the group. I mean, if any of you log on to any of the calls, it's very diverse, from how long the residents have been here to male, female, different colors. It's a wide spectrum, and I just feel like we're charging forward, and I'm so proud of everybody. They're doing such a great job. They're doing above and beyond, And I'm proud to be, I'm not a colonial because I didn't graduate from Shrewsbury High, but I'm proud to be a resident.
And I would say just the backing that we're getting from the town, the willingness from the officials to join. We had Chief Jim Bono join us on our meeting yesterday, and he's ready and willing to engage in conversation. Chief of Police, Chief Anderson, has been wonderful. So it's just, again, I would piggyback off of what Ruth said. It's a wonderful town. We have very amazing people, all walks of life, professionals in their respective fields, and they're passionate, and they're bringing this energy and their commitment to this force. Everyone's a volunteer, right? Everyone has so many other things to do. And it's just amazing, the wealth of knowledge and the willingness for people to share and come together each meeting after a tough meeting, the weeks prior, and come back to say, you know what, this is something that I'm passionate about. I want to do this work to make this great town even that much better, right?
Yeah. Thank you both for the work that you're doing. I know how difficult these meetings are. They're draining emotionally, especially because it seems that there's always twists and turns that no one was expecting. And I know last night was another example of that. And Ruth, I thought that you handled it very well when you said, okay, then we're going to stop here. We're going to get a sense of where people want to go. We're going to, schedule another meeting and then take a vote and move forward. So rather than getting stuck in the circular conversation, you found a way to lead us through it last night. And I know that that's not an easy thing to do. And I think that you and Adiola complement one another in the work that you're doing. And I definitely notice a difference in the group now that the two of you have taken charge of the direction of the group, which is exactly what this board had in mind. We did talk about another meeting. I think it's May 3rd. Is that official for the next meeting date? Because it might be a great opportunity for my colleagues, if they're interested, to join and be able to sit in on the meeting the way Chief Ona did last night. It starts at 7, and I will say that we are extremely good about sticking to an hour, a break, and then finishing up and adjourning by 9 p.m. I do believe it's always been that way, very respectful of people's time. So perhaps we can ask Valerie to share that meeting invite for the May 3rd meeting when you have the agenda set and the invite ready to go out with the rest of the board.
That would be great. Thank you.
All right. So if there are no more questions, and do you have any questions for us at this point?
I do not. No, thank you very much.
Okay.
We'd love to see you at our next meeting. So not a question, more like a statement and a charge.
A request, right?
A request.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We very much appreciate it. And I know that you both have very busy lives, and for Adiola, young kids that are probably looking at bedtime right now. So please don't feel like you need to stay on for the whole meeting. You are welcome to go ahead with your evening. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for having us.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, board members, item number 9 is a 7:25 p.m. meeting with Bernard Cahill, Town Planner, for a presentation on zoning bylaw amendment articles for the May 22nd, 2021 annual town meeting. So I'll turn it over to you, Bernie.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to share a window. I think it's going to be easier to just demonstrate as we go through. So this year, we have 3 zoning related articles on the warrant. So this first one, I'm just going to dive right into it, if that's okay. There's obviously, you're assigning the numbers tonight, so I'm not going to do it in numerical order. So the first one we have is, I think everyone remembers last year, of course, we adopted, or say town meeting adopted, the new town center zoning district. A bit of an oversight on a lot of people's parts, including mine. Well, there's a lot of moving parts, but what we realized afterwards is when we drew the new boundaries for the town center zoning district, they didn't match up perfectly with the existing ones at the time, so the limited business district and part of the residence B2 district. So as you can see in front of you on the screen tonight, where these didn't match up, on the bottom left-hand side, kind of the pinkish area, is some of the limited business district that remains from last year. That was never changed to anything else. So we kind of have these floating little slivers of limited business in the bottom left, the southwest corner. And in the upper right corner, you can see the northeast corner of the town center district are two small sections that are residence B2 left over. So the thought at the time, and we thought we had done this and we just hadn't included the language last year when we made these new boundaries, was to convert these little leftovers, if you will, into the adjacent zoning districts. So in the southwest quadrant of this picture, map that you're looking at would be residence B2 that'd be converted to. And the ones in the upper right of the northeast quadrant of the town center district would be converted to the residence B1 district. So again, it's just a case of when we drew those boundaries for the new town center district, they didn't match up with perfectly with what was there prior. And in the case of the residence B2, it actually overlapped a little bit and left out these two little sections. Before anyone asks, we have sent letters, or we did send letters already a couple weeks ago, well before the first planning board hearing, to each of the residents and owners of each of these lots and each of these houses. So everyone has received an individualized letter and notice of the meetings and have been invited to speak to the board. I received 2 phone calls, just questions, excuse me, just wondering what it was all about. No one came to the meeting on our April meeting a couple weeks ago. So that's pretty much it for this one. Again, just converting those to the adjacent residence districts. Any questions about this one, or Madam Chair, would you rather I go through all 3?
Let's pause right here. I think that might be
Okay.
easier because they're separate and distinct. Are there any questions at this point? I'm not seeing any, so why don't you go ahead to the next one, Bernie?
Sure. Okay. So the next one is just a matter of our zoning bylaws needing to catch up with recent case law in the state of Massachusetts. So currently, if you have a non-conforming residence in the town, so a single or 2 family dwelling unit, a house, and you wish to increase the size of it by more than 50%. So say you have a ranch house and you want to add an entire 2nd story on it, obviously that's a 100% increase, right? Because you're doubling the size of it, and your house, maybe it doesn't meet one of the setbacks or the lot size is too small. Currently, the way we have it written, you would require a special permit because you're making a change to an existing non-conforming structure, but also, as written, you would also need a variance on top of that because you're going beyond that 50% limit. Case law and what's called the Bell Alta decision from a couple years ago said that towns and zoning boards of appeals cannot have this kind of double whammy, if you will, for people wishing to go beyond that 50%. But they could still, towns would still have to have the special permits. So basically it says you can't do a variance and a special permit for over 50% increases. So we would still require a special permit because it's a change to an existing non-conforming structure. And that means when the zoning board looks at those types of things, they're still seeing if there's a detriment to the neighborhood. So that's the criteria they use, is it more detrimental to the neighborhood? So they're not without any teeth. It's just saying that the higher standard of the variance, it can't be used by the zoning board of appeals. So very simple fix to this, working together with Stephen Madow's town council to add the language, simply to make an exception for other than a single or 2 family home in this paragraph, as you can see here. So if it's a commercial, it would still count for commercial and other non-protected structures and uses, but just not for single and 2 family, which the state specifically calls out for protection. Are there any questions about this one?
I'm not seeing any.
All right, so let's just move on to the last one. So this one, let me zoom in a little bit. This is our existing, what this is really just a reformatting of the text of the bylaw. for accessory uses. No substantive changes have been made. I just want to stress that. We're not looking at substance this time around. Happy to look at it in the future, but this time we just needed to clean it up. So you can see here, it is very disjointed currently and very hard to follow. This is for accessory uses, for those who don't know, are things like swimming pools and decks and sheds and those and the like, which, believe it or not, takes up a huge chunk of our time. It's obviously one of the most common things people build in their yards, which is perfectly fine. So what we are proposing is to change that long written text you saw above up here, which is kind of hard to keep track of when you're trying to figure out where you're going to put your deck or your shed, and to change it into a table format to make it easier to read and understand, not just for the public, but also for the staff. We refer to these types of things all the time. Some of us have them on our walls, so we just quickly look at them. It's going to make it a lot easier for us, for developers, and for homeowners. So the first section up here is for things like garages and storage sheds and the like, and fences. And we also thought we'd take the opportunity to just add a diagram just as an explanation. We started doing that already in the zoning bylaw with the town center district. We did it a couple years ago with expansions on commercial properties over lot lines. We find it's a lot easier for people to understand when they have a graphic to look at. And then we have swimming pools, which is your other one I was talking about, is again, we've got what I call a lot of COVID swimming pools going in right now. So just like last year, there's a heck of a lot of decks and swimming pools. So again, we go through this, and then for some of the more complicated one is pools on corner lots. So we throw out a graphic for that one as well. So we did consult with pretty much all the planning department staff, of course, but building department as well, all the inspectors and the admins, to make sure that they were on board and we took their ideas into account, because again, they're working with this all the time on building permits. So want to make sure their voices were heard. Are there any questions about this one?
Not seeing any questions at this time. I have, however, been seeing a lot of decks and swimming pools go in as I walk my neighborhood every day. And I did hear the building inspector discuss how busy they've been with all sorts of permits related to these types of home improvement projects. I've seen additions. It's been crazy what people have been doing to their homes. I suppose when you have time and you're there 24/7, suddenly those projects become more pressing.
Yeah, for sure.
I think this is great, a definite improvement. I know if I were looking to put in any of these things, it would be much easier to follow this.
Great.
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions or comments from the board. So if you're all set with us, I don't believe we have to do any voting on this. It's just part of the warrant.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, and well, I just wanted to say publicly, we have one more public hearing on this at our May 6th meeting. So if anyone is interested, please join us on the 6th for planning board. All right.
Thank you. Does that meeting begin at 7 p.m.?
We start at 7. I think it's second or third on the agenda.
Great. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
All right. Thank all of you. All right.
Thanks. Bye-bye. All right, item number 10 under new business is to review and act to sign the warrant for the May 22nd, 2021 annual town meeting. So I will turn that over to you, Mr. Misakar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So board members, I'm going to refer to the warrant that is in your packet. There are two different documents available to you. One is the full written text of the warrant, and then there's a summary spreadsheet that you can refer to as well. I'm going to provide is a concise amount of information for each warrant article, and I'm happy to answer any questions. We've attempted to organize this warrant with in mind town meetings, role in the community, both as an appropriator and legislator of our bylaws, and then save some of the other miscellaneous articles towards the end of the meeting. So first article, Article 1 of 42 total proposed, is to receive reports of town officers and committee to make sure everyone's informed prior to moving forward with any other aspect of the meeting. Article 2 is fiscal year 2021 budget transfers. I am anticipating a few budget transfers with the board will note that we had a very a thin margin on our budget given the challenge of COVID and revenue reductions, and I'm finding some needs to move funding between personnel line items and expense line items. So this wouldn't be any additional funding into the budget, it'd be transfers within the current year. Article 3 is contingent upon the outcome of the vote at ballot question 1 for the override on May 4th. This is to establish an override stabilization fund. So town meeting has to vote to establish this special purpose stabilization fund. Article 4 would be to put funding into the override stabilization fund. So again, contingent upon the passage of the question. Article 5 is the adoption of the fiscal year 2022 operating budget. We've presented several models, both based upon a planned yes vote or a no result, and we will be ready to have clear recommendations and details available at town meeting for their adoption. Article 6, 7, and 8 is to bring in various sources of funding from 2 sources within Selco and then free cash to reduce the burden on the taxpayers and lower the tax rate. Article 9 is to fund medical expenses of retired disabled police and firefighters, of which we have about $7,000 of expenses, which is a normal amount. This would be raise and appropriate from taxation. Then we move into a series of articles for the operations and capital improvement plans of all of our utilities. So solid waste, sewer, water, storm water. And following that, we propose a capital improvement plan, which totals just shy of $2 million for the fiscal year, uses a variety of sources, including a transfer of a closed out article. Free cash is the primary source and a little bit of the tax levy. Article 18 would be to appropriate funds into the general stabilization account. Article 19 is a traditional required article to set annual spending limits for revolving accounts. There's 2 revolving accounts, transportation, which falls under the Council on Aging, and the Donahue Rowing Center, which falls under public facilities. Article 20 is to establish a fiscal year 22 cable access operating budget, which is a enterprise fund where we transfer funds received from Selco to the operation for Shrewsbury Media Corporation. 21 is the receipt of Chapter 90 transportation aid in the amount of $989,636. Article 22 is for a transfer of $18,000 for the sale of cemetery lots. Article 23 is for any prior fiscal year bills. As of this meeting, there still are none. Article 24 and 25 is the opportunity to clean up our financial books and rescind excess borrowing. This comes whenever we go to town meeting and ask them to approve a specific amount based upon an estimate early in the design process of a capital improvement project. And then we actually don't spend it all and did not borrow the total amount, which keeps dollars out of the tax levy. So we'd be rescinding almost $3 million for the library and almost $2 million for the water treatment plant. Article 26 would be to establish a new tax exemption for residents who meet the criteria of being blind. It's a blind tax exemption. Article 27 is to amend the personnel bylaw, provides a number of updates. The primary personnel aspect of it is to reestablish a employee probationary period and identify the circumstances where employees are reviewed either immediately after hire or upon a promotion from within. Article 28 is to amend the general bylaws of Article 2 for town meeting. And through this bylaw, we are proposing to make changes to provide more flexibility for the time and date of town meeting, as we've learned through different approaches over the past year related to COVID-19, and also formalize some of the processes that we used to improve the flow and facilitation of town meeting, including consent agenda and bundling of articles through single motions. Article 29 is to establish a community preservation committee. This is the step to detail out how the community preservation committee would be appointed, and also what their role will be with regards to oversight of the funding that we received after the adoption of the Community Preservation Act. Article 30 is to establish a general bylaw for an affordable housing trust, which we'll discuss details of a little bit later. Article 31, 32, and 33 are the articles that Mr. Cahill just described to you in the previous agenda item. Article 34, 35, and 36 are citizens petition. The first one's related to climate change. The second is related to limiting elected office holders of the Board of Selectmen and School Committee to 12 consecutive years in office. And Article 36 is requesting a vote with regards to the use of fluoride in the drinking water system. Article 37 is a article that's considered every other year, with a proposal for special legislation for the town of Shrewsbury to consider mobile homes affordable housing units, which is currently not permitted under state law. Article 38 is to acquire by gift from the Worcester Business Development Corporation to Selco 93 Centec Boulevard, which is a parcel of land that Selco already has existing infrastructure in, and the Worcester Business Development Corporation no longer has a use for. Article 39 is to acquire easements along the Route 20 corridor in Puritan Street. This article will include the opportunity or ability for the town to take both temporary and permanent easements if necessary, and therefore will have an appropriated amount sufficient to cover the cost of those takings if it's necessary. We're actively seeking participation with landowners along this corridor. Many of the easements that we do need are just temporary construction easements, which in some instances just provide us a foot or two of access so we can stand on people's private property and blend the berm and edge of the roadway appropriately. Article 40 is a traditional article to provide funding for counseling and educational services through Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services. Article 41 is a similar article but provides funding for the Lake Quinsigamond Commission for management of the quality of water in the lake. And Article 42 is to establish members of the Wright and Harlow Charitable Fund. So those are the 42 articles proposed for the annual town meeting. This evening, the board would set the time and location for the field house at 8:30 in the morning, which has already been scheduled for May 22nd.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Any questions from the board? Okay, not seeing any. So then we can sign the warrant or make a motion.
Madam Chair.
Mr. LeBeau?
Madam Chair, I move the board sign the warrant for the May 22nd, 2021 annual town meeting.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Mr. LeBeau?
Aye.
Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Mr. Kane?
Aye.
And myself, aye. So again, that means town meeting is Saturday, May 22nd at the field house at the high school at 8:30 a.m. Item number 11 is to review an act to set early in-person voting hours at 100 Maple Avenue, that's the town hall, for May 4th, 2021 annual town election pursuant to Chapter 5, the Acts of 2021. So there will be early in-person voting for the May 4th election, which is the annual town election, and also where the question will be question 1 for the override. Those dates would be Monday, April 26th from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Tuesday, April 27th from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Wednesday, April 28th from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and then Thursday, April 29th from noon to 7 p.m. So some evening hours there. So we just need a motion for that.
Madam Chair, I move the early in-person voting hours pursuant to Chapter 5 of 2021 as laid out in our agenda.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Mr. LeBeau?
Aye.
Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Mr. Kane?
Aye.
And myself, aye. I also like to note for the public that mail-in voting is also an option for this election, but that if you do want to request a ballot, you can go to the town clerk's website to get that application, and that can be dropped off in the bills box in front of town hall, and a ballot will be mailed to you, and that ballot could also be returned to the town hall or put through the mail. So that brings us to item number 12, which is to review and act on the adoption of Board of Selectmen policy number 30, which is a proclamation and designation policy, which came out of a conversation at a prior meeting where we received 2 requests from residents to proclaim or designate Youth Mental Health Week and Women's Owned Business Day. And we are seeing more and more requests from residents in this regard. And so it seemed appropriate to put a policy around how and when we go forward with these sort of requests. So that policy draft is in the drive if anyone has any comments or questions regarding the policy. I'm not seeing any. It does basically solidify what has been our informal practice. All right, so then we can, if there's no further questions, we can go ahead and vote on this policy.
Madam Chair,
Mr. LeBeau?
I move the board adopt draft policy number 30, proclamation and designation policy.
Second.
Okay. Mr. LeBeau?
Aye.
Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Mr. Kane?
Aye.
And myself, aye. And I would just ask that we could have the requests for the Youth Mental Health Week and Women Owned Business Day put on our next agenda so that we can vote on those in accordance with this newly approved policy, please. Item number 13 is to review and act on the 2021 water restrictions in accordance with the current Water Management Act permit requirements and pursuant to Article 18 of the town bylaws. So this is just the usual outdoor watering restrictions that we put in place yearly. Is there anything else different or changed about that? No. So this basically says non-essential outdoor watering hours are restricted before 9 a.m. and after 5 p.m. and that you are able to do non-essential watering based upon your street address with even numbered addresses engaging in non-essential outdoor water use on Wednesdays and Saturdays only, and odd number addresses on Thursdays and Sundays only. And there is no non-essential outdoor use of water on Mondays, Tuesdays, or Fridays. And this does go on to clearly define uses that are non-essential versus essential. So if there's no further questions or comments on this, I'll just take a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, Mr. LeBeau,
Aye.
Mr. Samia,
Aye.
Mr. Kane,
Aye.
and myself, aye. These will be on the town website if anyone's interested in brushing up on water restrictions. Item number 14 is to review and act on the Route 20 corridor turning restrictions. Mr. Mizikar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as you know, the board has been working with Mass DOT and Representative Kane on the development of a master plan for the Route 20 corridor that seeks to first and foremost provide general traffic safety improvements and also ready the corridor for further economic development. The proposal this evening based upon that master plan is for the board to adopt and accept the traffic safety recommendations provided in the master plan and ask Mass DOT to prioritize the prohibiting left turns from South Street onto Route 20. This is a continued trouble spot with traffic. It's very difficult to see coming out of South Street, and it's a downhill conveyance of traffic on Route 20 heading eastbound. So if the board would be willing to adopt the safety recommendations and ask Mass DOT to prioritize the no left turn at this intersection. Mass DOT is also that we solicit feedback from this. So with the adoption of this, we will formally solicit feedback through our various social media, website, and other media capabilities on this turn restriction. And we will delay the presentation until your next board meeting such that we can inform you of any feedback that we've received.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board?
No.
All right, then I will take a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the board, the recommendations from the master plan relative to Route 20 improvements.
Second.
Okay. Mr. LeBeau?
Aye.
Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Mr. Kane?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Item number 15 is to review and act to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 110G regarding electronic signatures.
So, Madam Chair, this this warrant article, or excuse me, this agenda item is on the agenda this evening because Massachusetts Chapter 110G of the general laws provides that electronic signatures are valid and electronic documents are to be seen as legal documents. However, the Registry of Deeds in Worcester, all registries require a letter to be submitted from entities like the Board of Selectmen if they've elected to utilize electronic signatures. We need to put that on file with them. So upon the acceptance of this locally, we would then send a letter to the Registry of Deeds so that the Board of Selectmen could use our electronic signatures in any future real estate transactions.
Okay. Seems straightforward enough. Take a motion.
Madam Chair, I move the board accept the provisions of MGL Chapter 110G regarding electronic signatures and direct the clerk to sign the notice of certified vote.
Second.
Okay. Mr. LeBeau?
Aye.
Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Mr. Kane? And
Aye.
myself, aye. Item number 16 is to review and act on the renewal of the Class 2 dealer license for Clinton Motor Cars LLC, 155 to 173 Harvard Turnpike to expire on January 1st, 2022. There were some outstanding things that needed to be taken care of with the application. And so it is my understanding that all of those outstanding items have now been resolved, and we are okay to move ahead now and approve the renewal of the Class 2 dealer license for Clinton Motor Cars. Mr. Mizikar, is there anything that you wanted to add?
No, that is correct. The owner of Clinton Motor Cars does know that he still needs to come back to request a special permit through the ZBA if he wants to offer public detailing in the outbuilding on the property. He's well aware of that. We will remind him of that when we reissue the license. For clarity purposes, we learned that the RMV doesn't agree that we can issue a license for less than 1 year. So I don't think this is something that we'll be able to do in the future.
Okay. So I'll take a motion.
Madam Chair, I move the board approve the renewal of the Class 2 dealer's license for Clinton Motor Cars LLC, 155, 173 Hartford Pike to expire January 1st, 2022.
Second.
All right, Mr. LeBeau,
Aye.
Mr. Samia,
Aye.
Mr. Kane,
Aye.
and myself, aye. Item number 17 is under old business. It's to review and act to appoint 2 at-large members to the Police Station Building Committee, filling 2 vacancies on that committee, as we've decided not to move forward with any renovations to Town Hall or the Senior Center at this time. So that does leave two positions. So we have 4 people that sent in letters of interest and resumes. Thomas O'Brien of 15 Ravelli Street, John Ambra of 16 Founders Road, Hillary King of 27 Edgewood Road, and Donna Largest O'Connor of 16 Bunker Hill Road.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Kane.
once again, we're fortunate to get the number and quality of applicants. I've known John Ambra personally and professionally for several years now, and I think his addition would be a strong addition to the building committee, given his professional experience in construction and construction management. And I also think Donna Largest O'Connor, given her years of service in this town, and a particular focus on public safety while as a member of the finance committee, would also be an appropriate addition. I would move both of those.
Second.
Okay, if there's any further discussion. Not seeing any. Mr. LeBeau.
Aye.
Mr. Samia.
Aye.
Mr. Kane.
Aye.
And myself, aye. We are, of course, always grateful for people that are willing to volunteer their time on behalf of the town, and thank everyone for their application. Item number 18 is to review and act on the Affordable Housing Trust bylaw. Selectman DiPaolo, who's not with us this evening, and Selectman Samia have been working on this bylaw. So Mr. Samia, if you would like to provide us any additional updates on this, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. The only changes, as you'll see in a red line in the drive, relate to changes recommended by outside counsel. One of the concerns that Selectman DiPaolo and I had as we looked at other models was to make sure that we were properly citing various statutes. We had the open meeting statute correct, but others we were just looking at needed to be shepherdized, as well as council's view, because council views several of these, whereas we're drafting one and looking at others, and they know the issue. So the changes that are in the drive, mostly linguistic or cleanup, and some moving around, but other than that, it's a very similar document to what we saw before with council comments.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions or comments on this document, as I know that you and Mr. DiPaolo have worked diligently on this. There's been many iterations of the draft. Is there anyone else with questions or comments regarding this document?
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Kane.
I'm prepared to end the beating of this dead horse this evening, but I do want to just say again, I don't know why we can't put this money into the CPA and designate it for the use for housing. And furthermore, I just find it completely out of character that a Board of Selectmen would be in a position to cumulatively spend an amount exceeding $200,000 or borrowing independent of town meeting. So that's it. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, so I believe we are ready to move to a vote on this.
Madam Chair.
Mr. LeBeau.
Madam Chair, I move the board adopt the draft in our packet of the municipal, it'll be Article 4N in the town bylaws, the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust.
Second.
Okay, there's no further discussion. Mr. LeBeau.
Aye.
Mr. Samia.
Aye.
Mr. Kane.
No.
And myself, aye. All right, that brings us to correspondence. Items number 19 through 40 are all decisions of the Zoning Board of Appeals from October 26th, 2020 through January 25th, 2021. Item number 41 is an email dated March 21st, 2021 from John Nedaleski, District Director for Congressman James McGovern, to Kevin Mizikar, Town Manager, regarding the ARP updates. Item number 42 is a letter dated March 24th, 2021 from Dan Cordeau, Director, Office of Leasing and State Office Planning, regarding the Commonwealth search for lease space. Item number 43 is a letter dated March 26th from Nick Repetka, Highway Division Manager, to Kevin Mizikar, Town Manager, regarding the street sweeping report. Street sweeping began on March 17th, and it is continuing still. As of the update we received in this packet, over 72 tons of material have been hauled to the landfill on Route 20. The streets are looking great, so thank you to Nick and his crew for their hard work. Item number 44 is an email dated March 30th, 2021 through March 31st, 2021. So there were a few of them, from Stan Transiak, 562 South Street, regarding Proposition 2.5 override. Mr. Transiak had some questions, and Mr. Mizikar answered them. Item number 45 is a letter dated March 31st, 2021 from Sherry Morana, DVM, Community Animal Hospital, 15 Clue Street, regarding response to complaint. This was a complaint from a resident regarding barking prior to the agreed upon hours in the permit, and that is being taken care of by the town. Item number 46 is an email dated April 1st, 2021 from David Snowden, DPW Business Manager, regarding the DPW in the Works page. In the Works is a resource for the community. It's like a newsletter providing snapshots and highlights of ongoing DPW projects throughout the town that can be found on the town website. Item number 47 is an email dated April 2nd, 2021 from State Representative Hannah Kane, regarding the Baker-Polito administration announcing $4 million in grant awards for fire departments. And Shrewsbury did receive $20,000 in funding as part of this grant program to purchase safety equipment. Item number 48 is an email dated April 2nd, 2021 from Kevin Mizikar, Town Manager, regarding community-directed funding request. Item number 49 is a letter dated April 2nd, 2021 from Bernard Cahill, Town Planner, regarding planning representative on Community Preservation Committee. And as you might remember, this Community Preservation Committee, which will be formed by a vote of town meeting, will have members on it from different boards and committees in town, and Stephen Boulay is going to be the representative from the planning board on that committee. Item number 50 is an email dated April 5th, 2021 from State Representative Hannah Kane, regarding federal funds information for your district. Item number 51, a letter dated April 7th, 2021 from Joyce McCrae, 24 Elm Street, regarding Patrick Motors car carrier on Elm Street. This is from a resident of Elm Street that is concerned about the loading and unloading of large trucks and car carriers at Patrick Motors, and also the no left turn sign on Elm Street, which is posted at the entrance of the dealership, being ignored. Concerns with the truck restriction on Bailey Road. So there are a variety of concerns in here. And I know that this was brought to the attention of Mr. DiPaolo, who in his absence has asked that we take a look at the police records on this, at the log, to see what sort of complaints we are getting, sort of take a historical look at that, and then be able to go back to Patrick Motors to inquire about what they have to say as far as the violations that the resident is bringing up here. So we definitely want to make sure that we do some smoothing over between the residents and the business. Item number 52 is an email dated April 7th, 2021 from State Representative Hannah Kane, regarding a local aid agreement announcement. Item number 53 is a letter dated April 7th, 2021 from Nick Repetka, Highway Division Manager, to Kevin Mizikar, Town Manager, regarding the street sweeping report. Again, just outlining to us that another 140 tons of material was hauled to the landfill on Route 20. And item number 54 is an email dated April 8th, 2021 from James Mona, Fire Chief, regarding the 2020 year-end report and statistics. So that brings us to the end of this agenda. So if there is nothing more to come before the board in open session, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Mr. LeBeau,
Aye.
Mr. Samia,
Aye.
and myself, aye. So this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Madam Chair.